I got a lot of great feedback from my last two videos on tone capacitors. Got a lot of questions and some requests for some more recorded examples. So today I'm going to do a little follow-up, starting with some Q&A, and then I'll record another example of a ceramic cap compared to the other material types, and then I'll do some distorted examples. So first question had to do with wiring. Specifically, am I using 50s wiring? Now, 50s wiring is where you connect up the tone pot to the output of the volume pot rather than to the input of the volume pot, as it is in modern wiring. And you usually discuss 50s wiring in the context of guitars with two volume pots and two tone pots, like a Les Paul or an ES335. Now, in this guitar, there is a single master tone, and I've got three individual volume pots connected through a three-way switch to a single master tone. So by its very nature, the only way you can do this is essentially 50s wiring. The tone control is at the output of those three volume pots. So the second question is how my recording setup may be affecting the sound. Now, the signal is coming from my guitar and passing through the electronics, which are wired up with these crappy alligator leads, which unfortunately are picking up some RF noise. Now from there it's plugged into my Vox VT30 amp, which for the clean recordings I have set to the Boutique Clean model, the green preset. And for the distorted recordings I'm using the AC50 CP2 model, again the green preset. It's being mic'd with a Rode NT1 microphone, which is plugged into a Mackie 1202 mixer. And of course these three things, the amp, the mic, and the mixer, are introducing some of their own sound character and EQ. This is being recorded on my Canon HF200 camcorder, which is using AC3 Dolby Digital compression at 48K 16-bit. And the files are being post-processed in Sony Vegas, which is using AAC compression on the audio, again 48K 16-bit at 192 kilobits per second. Then if you're watching this on YouTube, well, YouTube is doing whatever it does to the audio, and you're listening to it on your headphones or your PC speakers or whatever. So all this considered, it's not the ultimate hi-fi pristine recording, but it's important to recognize that none of these factors are changing throughout any of my recordings. So if you're listening to a comparison of two capacitors and you hear some difference between them, I think it's a genuine illustration of whatever differences there may be in those caps, be it the construction and the material type or the capacitance, and not because of the overall recording setup, which is constant between the two recordings. Now, a few people asked me about the actual measured capacitance values of these caps. Now, all of the ones here, aside from the Tropical Fish, are rated at 0.022 microfarads. The Tropical Fish is 0.033. But they're all within some tolerance, so they're obviously not all exactly 0.022 microfarads. So let's go ahead and measure them. So I'll set my multimeter to nanofarads and zero it out. Then starting with the orange drop, it reads 0.019 microfarads, the Mallory is 0.020, paper and oil is 0.021, vintage yellow is 0.019, the Epi mylar is 0.021, ceramic is 0.021, vintage gray is again 0.021, and the tropical fish is 0.030. So yeah, these little differences in the capacitance values will change the cutoff frequency of the circuit, thereby rolling off different amounts of high frequencies. But I don't think those little differences can totally account for the different sound character we're hearing between the different material types. Especially in the case where we had the tone pot turned all the way up, the cutoff frequency is pretty high, and yet I can still hear some differences between the material types, and those differences are more down in the mids. So I think, where the ideal case shows that, everything above a certain frequency, the cutoff frequency, is passing through, whereas everything below it is cut off. I think in the real world, the graph would really show some, dips, valleys, and peaks where there's some resonances or some parts of the frequency range that are subdued. And those subtle differences are based on the capacitor construction and material type. And that's what we're hearing. So somebody pointed out that this guitar is pretty loud acoustically, and that the acoustic sound might be getting picked up through the microphone on the amp, making the recorded examples a little brighter than they should be. Now, it's a good point. My recording setup consists of two microphones. I have one pointed at my face, and then I have a second microphone close micing the amp. And it's a cardioid pattern mic with pretty good rear rejection. It's about 8 feet away from me with the mic facing away from me. And of course, when I'm playing back the examples, I mute the vocal mic whenever I play a guitar example. But ideally, what I really should have done was put the amp and mic on the amp in a completely separate room from where I was playing. So sorry about that. But as an example, here's a quick strum on the guitar being picked up through the microphone on the amp with the amp turned off, so we just see how loud it is by itself. So someone else pointed out that me displaying the name of the capacitor type at the bottom of the screen while I was playing through that cap is giving a subtle psychological cue to the listener that may cause the perception of the sound to be a little different. If you're predisposed to paper and oil, for example, and you see the word paper and oil on the screen, you might just kind of think that it sounds better. So what I'm going to do, if you really want to do a double-blind test without any labels on them, I'm going to make all the raw recordings available at my blog, www.planetz.com. You can download these. Now the individual file names will be labeled, but if you run them through a ABX tool, which you can search for and download, you can do a double-blind test to test yourself, and I think there are obvious apparent differences. It's not that you're really not hearing anything. The question is, which one do you really like the best? And without having any textual cues, maybe you'll find that you like a ceramic cheap 50-cent cap just as well as the $15 paper and oil. Or maybe not. Maybe it'll validate your preferences. So there you go.